Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, busy one tonight. It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, Labour's war on farmers, on business and on aspirational families will bankrupt the country and hurt the ordinary working people that Sir Keir Starmer says he cares most about. I'll be giving my unapologetic verdict on this failing administration in just a moment. In the big story, as 1 million people sign a petition for a snap poll, does Britain need a general election? We'll hear from both sides on that one. Are Harry and Meghan going to spend Christmas apart? I'll be asking a top royal insider. With his confrontational position on Russia, has Sir Keir Starmer put a target on our back? Could Vladimir Putin shut down Britain with a devastating cyber attack? And in an hour's time, in My Take at 10, following their disastrous politically correct ad campaign, the woke boss of Jaguar launches an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. I'll be dealing with this car crash in slow motion in an extra long Take at 10 special. You won't want to miss it. Plus, tonight's top pundits. We have Head of Communications at the Popular Conservatives, Annunciata Rees-Mogg, former Labour Party advisor Paul Richards and former advisor to Boris Johnson. Remember him? Lord Corvier Ranger. Two hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. Does Britain need a general election? We'll debate that after the news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Mark, thank you. A very good evening. It's just gone 9 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has said that he has spoken to Welsh First Minister Eluned Morgan about flooding in Wales, as 4 people have now died as a result of the weather brought to the UK by Storm Bert. Eluned Morgan has said that it has been a really difficult weekend, describing the impact as absolutely devastating. The storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours to some areas, with more than 100 flood alerts in place across the UK. A major incident has been declared in South Wales, where between 200 and 300 properties have been affected by today's flooding, and a bridge which was replaced after Storm Dennis has been completely washed away. Sir Keir Starmer said in his post on X that he is receiving updates on Storm Bert as it develops across the UK. Large parts of the Midlands are under floodwater too, after the Kyer Brook in Tenbury Wells rose and caused a wall to collapse, flooding the Worcestershire town. Yellow warnings for wind and rain are in place for western parts of Scotland and Wales, south east England and Northern Ireland. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That comes as the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members this week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Kevin Hollinrake told GB News that Labour need to increase the UK's defence spending now.
One of the highest spenders in NATO, constantly have been, but we recognise there are growing threats around the world, and that's why we committed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And that is a commitment not matched by the Labour government. They've made some kind of general commitment to get there at some point in the future, but the threat is now, and we should bolster our defences now. We made that firm commitment. Labour should do the same.
Elsewhere, the Justice Secretary says the state should never offer death as a service. Shabana Mahmood made the comments in a strongly worded intervention over the assisted dying bill ahead of a historic Commons vote next week. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. A group of faith leaders have signed a letter opposing the bill ahead of its debate by MPs. And Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. And just briefly, musical blockbuster Wicked has surpassed Gladiator 2 and Paddington in Peru to secure the biggest opening weekend of 2024 for Vue Cinemas. The cinema chain said the film, which stars Oscar-nominated actress Cynthia Erivo and Grammy-winning pop star Ariana Grande, has had the largest opening weekend for a staged musical adaptation in its history. The two-part film, which was released in the UK on Friday, is up 60% on Les Miserables' opening weekend in 2012 and 3 times larger than the 2022 film adaptation of Matilda. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good to have Katie back. She returns in an hour's time. A very busy show. In my take at 10, the boss of Jaguar, who has been responsible for a catastrophic woke ad campaign which will probably destroy the company, this boss has launched an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. So I'll be dealing with this individual in no uncertain terms in an extra long Take at 10 special. That's in an hour. You won't want to miss it. But first, my big opinion. Good evening. Now, Labour said that they were going to transform Britain. How right they were. They've turned this once free market economy and open liberal society into a 1984 socialist nightmare. They bashed arguably the most vulnerable group in our society, pensioners, 10 million of them, who will be shivering in their homes this winter. Well, frankly, they already are. How cold has it been this weekend? I think when Labour imagine what a pensioner is, they don't think of someone living hand to mouth, deciding whether or not to have a meal or to switch on the radiator. I don't think that's how they perceive pensioners. I think they think of Hyacinth Bouquet from Keeping Up Appearances in her posh end-of-terrace accommodation. They think of the Earl of Grantham from Downton Abbey, whose only concern is having enough bone marrow for his Labrador Isis. They think of millionaire Bake-Off star Mary Berry, whose only concern in the cold winter months is getting a soggy bottom. But that is not what pensioners are. Millions of pensioners have no real quality of life to speak of and live in effective poverty. It was a bizarre miscalculation by a party dominated by North London metropolitan groupthink. It's the same reason that the farmers have been treated so badly and thrown under the tractor by Labour. Why? Well, because when Labour think of the farming community, they think of 300 quid Barber jackets, 80 grand Range Rovers and sprawling country estates. Utter bollocks. Farmers live on valuable assets, which are of no value to them, as it's where they live and work. In spite of the often 24/7 toil in all weathers, many farmers make less money than a primary school teacher. The same out-of-touch attitude can be seen towards wealth creators. This incoming Labour government's cabinet has almost no business experience. They are lawyers, public sector stiffs and career politicians who wouldn't know a business model if it bit them in the bum. When Labour think of entrepreneurs, they think of James Dyson, Richard Branson and Lord Sugar, rather than the actual entrepreneurs, the bosses of small and medium-sized enterprises, struggling to meet the monthly payroll, settle invoices from suppliers, get paid themselves and navigate a complex nexus of government taxes and regulations made more onerous thanks to Angela Rayner's job-wrecking workers' rights revolution. The national insurance raid on business, which the IFS have said will be paid for by lower wages, less recruitment, less investment and sackings, comes from the same mentality as an assault on private schools, which will see lower income families priced out of the sector, already adding to the burden of oversubscribed state schools. But whilst the party is supposed to be progressive and was founded to support the poorest and weakest in our society, a very noble cause if ever there was one, this vicious class war and this war on aspiration will affect Keir Starmer's beloved ordinary working people the most. And that doesn't sound very progressive to me. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. First up, the head of communications at the Popular Conservatives, Annunciata Rees-Mogg, former top Labour Party advisor, the brilliant Paul Richards, and we have a Lord in the house, so everyone behave, former advisor to Boris Johnson, political commentator, Kulveer Ranger. Kulveer, good to see you. Let's start with you on this one. I believe it's class warfare, which actually hurts the poorest most.
It is sad to see what's playing out at the moment, and we can call it class warfare, but what we do see is a muddled vision for where Britain is going to be going. And I think that's the problem that most voters are finding, even those who voted for Labour, because you hear Labour voters saying, I'm unclear where the leadership, where the Prime Minister, where the party's set of policies is taking Britain. Yes, we can call out the class war elements of it, because, yes, well, you wouldn't call pensioners a class war policy, would you? You wouldn't call farmers a class war.
No, but I think Labour see pensioners as Hyacinth Bouquet in their sort of end of terrace semi.
And I think that's part of the problem that
and I think they think all the farmers are Jeremy Clarkson.
Well, I think that's part of the problem that you were highlighting, that there feels to be a stereotypical approach to the people that they are governing. They seem to have these set views, and maybe that's inexperience. I think you were highlighting that from a business perspective. There does seem to be a lack of depth in terms of political capability within this Labour Party. Most of the people in that government have been there since Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, so there's a real set view that they have from a political perspective. And we are seeing that view played out through drip feeding of policies that are coming out, which was the sort of, actually, the real issue was the budget. The budget was the one that everybody held their breath and said, OK, we can see these individual actions happening, but surely there's a plan for the economy. And what we saw was a tax raid on business. And that has basically not put a handbrake on the economy's growth, because it wasn't accelerating away, but it's definitely stalled it. And I'm listening to small businesses, large businesses, international markets, who are all telling me the one thing they suddenly became really concerned about this government is when they saw their approach to business in the budget.
Annunciata, these policies are born out of prejudice and spite.
I think there is a lot of spite, and I think that Labour do, if they don't see the elderly as Hyacinth Bouquet or the Dowager Duchess, they do see them as being, on the whole, which they are, Conservative voters, certainly to the right of Labour. on average, and that therefore is an open goal without losing their own support. And I think they think the same of the farmers. I think they might also find that they're quite wrong in a lot of these assumptions. But they have actually been quite fair. They've been attacking everyone. They have been making everyone poorer. That if you look at the British Retail Consortium, from good old uber woke Boots, the chemist, through to Tesco, Asda, via Marks and Spencer's, over 80 major retailers have warned they'll have to have job losses. Now, those are not job losses of the top executives. That is going to affect the working people on the shop floors. They've also gone after students with tuition fees being increased. They've gone after first-time buyers by reducing the thresholds for stamp duty. This has just been a pernicious budget, whoever you are, and it will kill growth and increase inflation.
Now, Paul, I'm a floating voter. I have voted Labour in the past several times. I hope to vote Labour again in the future. Labour governments have done good things in the past, but this last 4 months has been a disaster, hasn't it?
No, it hasn't, and I've never heard such nonsense as the last 10 minutes. I mean, for a start off, Labour's put the pensions up by maintaining the triple lock, so actually most...
A Tory policy.
Fair enough, but if the end result is pensioners getting more money, then that's a good thing. And the last Labour government, let's not forget, you know, had a massive war on pensioner poverty and did...
And the minimum wage was a triumph?
Under Gordon Brown. We've put the minimum wage up as well now, so lower paid workers, millions of them are getting a pay rise this winter, which will go into the economy. And to say, Cover, that we haven't got any kind of plan, the plan is to get economic growth after 14 years of sclerosis.
Now, that's where you and I have to part company, Paul, because the OBR have revised growth down since the budget.
But it's only 3.5 months into
budget for growth where growth goes down.
There's been one budget, and we're 3.5 months into a 4 or 5 year Labour government. And
I'd accept like the same growth, but I wouldn't expect it to go down.
And I would say what I always say,
down.
which is this is a government that has to be judged in 4 years' time as to what actually has happened in the real economy. We've had to rescue the National Health Service. That's what this last budget was all about.
I'll come to you in a moment, Annunciata. Finish your point, Paul.
Well, because everybody you've just talked about, whether it's pensioners or farmers or students, we all rely on the National Health Service, and that was on its knees, and so it needed that injection of cash that it's had to get through the winter crisis. So it is not a class war. I think that's a...
I mean, what about the farmers' policy? I mean, that would be a straight U-turn. Don't you think they should just drop that inheritance tax rate altogether on farmers?
I saw some figures today suggesting that a third of those estates that might come into this are rich people have just invested in land.
Here we go. More gaslighting. Paul, if it was only rich hedge funds that were benefiting...
I said a third of them.
Right, but if it was rich hedge funds...
number is people dodging the tax.
It's funny I should talk about hedge funds and farming, but anyhow, it's a different kind of hedge, isn't it? The issue is that these so-called millionaires who are using farming as a tax loophole...
Like Clarkson.
Why did
14,000
farmers protest on Tuesday of last week?
Well, the same reason they came out against fox hunting and saying the people doing the fuel protests, they don't like Labour governments, that's why.
Wait a minute, this is a very trivial response to a lot of farmers who are deeply concerned about this tax rate. They think they're going to lose the farm altogether. Some apparently are considering taking their own lives. A farmer told The Independent this week that suicides may go up. That's from The Independent newspaper.
They've already got the highest rate
that
of
may
any
go
profession.
up further because of the stress about this. Where's the empathy?
Well, the reporting guidelines on suicide are that you can't speculate on people's motives for doing that. The Samaritans are very clear on this, so let's nail that.
OK.
But second of all, if you look at the actual numbers, it's a very small number of farms. Most farms are not going to be even taken in by this policy.
No,
I think it's a big mistake.
That's the Treasury prediction. That is not DEFRA's prediction. DEFRA says it'll be 2/3 of farms. They can't even agree their figures amongst themselves, and if you then talk to the NFU or the Country Landowners Association or anyone who actually understands agriculture and farming, the figures are most farmers by a long way.
Wait a minute, you're just calling farmers tax dodgers?
Not all of them. I'm talking about the ones who are the most protest.
Paul, we're good friends. I think you're having a John McTernan moment here. OK, this is the guy that told
Patrick to put them out of business.
Yeah, he told Patrick Christie's that what Labour should do is do to the farmers what Thatcher did to the miners. Do you share that view?
I would not share that view. I think
you've just called farmers tax dodgers.
Some of them are trying to avoid the tax that is going into our National Health Service.
Why did 14,000 farmers enter London, give up a day of farming at personal cost in order to protest against it?
Many of those people aren't even affected by the policy. It's because they want to protest the Labour government. They don't like the Labour government. government.
Well, I think, OK, if they don't like the Labour government, the Labour government is giving them a reason not to like them by either implementing a policy that they don't like, but also not explaining how, you know, they're not preparing the wicket. So they've annoyed the pensioners, they've annoyed the students, they've annoyed the farmers. Where's the vision? So, Paul, I'll be absolutely clear. The budget gave a sense of direction for 5 years that this government's going to be in play. And what it said was they're going to tax businesses more. Where is the growth coming from? If the ambition for this government is growth, it hasn't demonstrated, not just to me, but to the economic markets where it's going to come from.
You don't get growth from a low tax, you know, free market, because we tried that for 14 years and it didn't work.
OK, well, listen, I tell you what, I think it's very clear that my pundits don't agree with each other, which is why we booked them for the show tonight. Their sparks will fly this evening. Extraordinary remarks there from former senior Labour advisor Paul Richards, that actually the farmers were protesting because it was political and they don't like this Labour government. Do you definitely come back to that for the papers at 10:30? That story's not going away, but stories. Is my mic going to borrow? All right, I'll shout in lovely and naughty direction. In the big story, as 1 million people sign a petition for a snap poll, does Britain need a general election? We'll hear from both sides on that next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Locals in Abingdon in Oxfordshire have signed a petition to keep the name of their local pub, and it's called The Midget. Now, this comes after a university lecturer led an 11-month campaign to change the name of the pub, and the owners, Green King, have caved in. But locals are fighting back, and GB News spoke to one resident, Leanne Thompson, for her thoughts earlier today.
I'm not feeling great about it, to be honest. You know, it's a pub that's been here for a very long time. It's called The Midget after a MG car, and they're changing it to the Roaring Range Rock, which a lot of people are not happy about. We know why they're changing it, but a lady apparently came in who was very upset at the offensive term for the name midget. But nobody here sees it as an offensive term. You don't see the midget and feel any kind of offence towards that. It's named after a car. If she was to actually come, she might actually know more about it, but apparently she's not even been into the pub. She's just heard about it and broadcasted on social media that she wanted the name changed because it's offensive, which as locals don't feel that way. It's the midget. It will always be the midget. And if you look, it's even still on Midget Close. So I don't know if they're going to change it to the Roaring Range Rock Close.
Do you know, you should walk into the Midget now and go, do you serve shorts? And just keep going on the joke. It's named after a car, the MG Midget, that was manufactured in the town of Abingdon for a while. The car was released in 1961. The Boozer was built in 1974, giving huge pride to the area. It wasn't named after midgets, you know, the Snow White and the 7 vertically challenged individuals variety. It's named after a car.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Labour's class war and war on aspiration will hurt all of us. That's the topic of my big opinion. Well, it's kind of broken the internet. And let me tell you, on the message board, gbnews.com/your say, David's not happy. Anyone who's old enough will remember that every socialist Labour government has always bankrupted the nation, leaving a horrendous, broken economy. This time, they are on steroids. Jude says the government and the NFU should sit down. They should sit down. Family show. Careful, everyone. The government and the NFU should sit down and share their figures because someone isn't telling the truth. And Richard, that Labour should be judged in 5 years is an argument that the ends justify the means. I think they should be judged now as well as then. It's not only how we get there, it's also the way we get there. Look, your messages are always the highlight of the show. Keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. But first, this. It is time now for the big story, and a petition calling for a debate in the House of Commons about holding an immediate general election has been launched. And Faye, I don't know if we've got footage of the latest result. We're just at the moment looking at this because this is a developing story. Let me tell you that somebody launched a request for a petition to have a general election debated in Parliament. Well, the latest figure, as we speak, at 9:23 on a Sunday evening, 1.5 million signatories. That's right, 1,596,572. That is the live score. It could hit 2 million. What percentage of the entire voting population is that? Well, listen, there you go. Does Britain need a general election? Let's get the views of writer and broadcaster Rebecca Reid. Rebecca, really good to see you again. We're going to get the views of Annunziata Rees-Mogg in just a moment. But if that many people want an election after 4 months, this is a big problem for Labour, isn't it?
No, it's not a big problem. It's a little page on a website. And actually, I just checked and I was able to try and sign it 4 times because I have 4 email addresses. So I accept that it's a big number, but there is a very, very, very little security around it. And I think a lot of people have probably signed it more than once. Also, the irony is that when you try and use one of these petitions, there's a very long list of rules and regulations you have to sign up to, one of which says these petitions cannot be used to call for people to be given a job, lose a job, given an honour, lose an honour, or call for a general election. So they have created a petition which is in violation of the rules of these petitions. So while I'm glad these people had something to do over the weekend, and I'm sad for them that they are feeling so frustrated, it is meaningless and kind of pointless.
Now, isn't that a bit patronising, saying that you're sad for them? It sounds like you're trivialising this.
I am trivialising it because I think it's silly, but also I sat through many years of a Conservative government that I found unpleasant and uncomfortable, and I felt bad for myself then, so I now feel bad for them. But
is democracy silly? Is the voice of the people silly? I mean, I accept your point that maybe that 1.5 million, some of it could be a little gerrymandered, but if it was just 500,000 or even 100,000 people that had voted for a general election, what would you say to those people?
I would say we just had a general election. And you had your chance to vote in that. And when you win a general election, you get up to 5 years to be in power. And people can be as cross as they like on the internet, but that is the rule. And I think it really, if you feel very frustrated right now, sitting behind a keyboard and typing is not the most useful thing you can do. Going into your community, doing good to people who you know, charity starts at home, changing the world in real, meaningful ways around you, useful. Saying cross things on the internet, big waste of time.
Annunziata, we've had an election. Drink it up.
We have had an election, and in fact, pretty much everyone I know who's signed this petition admits that it is powerless, that they want to make a statement of discontent. And it is powerless, but it is not, as Rebecca just said, meaningless. It is sending a very strong message, and that is what the people signing want it to do. And I asked my followers on Twitter for why they might have signed it. The number one reason that comes up again and again and again is that Labour outright lied in its manifesto and in its promises to electors before they won votes, and that there should be an answerability to the promises you make before an election, that you don't go completely back on them within 140 days of the election. That we've now seen U-turns on numerous issues, but most notably winter fuel allowances and the inheritance tax on farmers and all small businesses, as it happens, that gets much less coverage. And these are pernicious moves against entire groups of people, but they are emblematic of a lack of understanding of our nation.
There you go. Rebecca, how do you respond to that?
I would love to hear which government has been in power in the last, I'm going to use my lifetime, 30-something years, 32 years, who haven't gone back on some of the election or manifesto promises they made. I think the best comparison that I've seen for this is Brexit, because there were absolutely things said by both sides of Brexit. Leave said, if we leave, we're all going to be eating rats in bunkers. Remain said, we're all going to be so rich, we're all going to be millionaires. Everybody lied. It was a very silly campaign. Nobody behaved terribly well. But I have never had any time for people who wanted to have another referendum after Brexit. You get the result and then you be a grown-up and you accept it. And it was childish and a bit pathetic when Brexit people did it, and it's childish and a bit pathetic now.
By the way, I don't think there were any Brexit lies, not even a single one. And I voted Remain. Can you name a single Brexit lie in the run-up to the referendum? Because I'm not aware of any.
I would say that, generally speaking, I was in my very early 20s and drunk most of the time, but I do remember there being an amount of money for the NHS that I'm not sure the NHS ever got.
They got more than that. During the pandemic, they got an annual boost of 20 billion, which far outnumbers the 350 million that was on the side of the bus.
Oh my goodness, so they knew that the pandemic was going to happen when they made that promise. That's amazing. Like, how? That's incredible. That's clairvoyant.
Because they saved that money from the EU. Because we weren't paying that money to the European Union anymore, and we had freedom in how we spent it instead, and could choose to give it to the NHS, which the Conservatives did. And you mentioned that which governments haven't gone back on promises. Name me one that has done it within the first 4 months of being in power. This is really unprecedented. It's represented by Keir Starmer's collapse in the polls and this petition.
Okay, you're not seriously arguing that it's okay if you do it after 6 months or 9 months, but it's not okay to do it after 4.
Well, it's not a great start, is it? I mean, you normally expect governments to sort of lose the plot towards the end. I was a great admirer of Margaret Thatcher. I think she liberated the working class. She turned Britain into a diplomatic and economic and military powerhouse. But by the end, she had to go. She lost the plot. That's what happens to governments. They get tired. Labour's tired after 4 months. I mean, let me give you a few facts, if you'd like. Former head of MI6, Richard Dearlove, told Camilla Tominey this morning on GB News that this Labour government is threatening our national security, from defence to food to energy. Meanwhile, the OBR have said that inflation is going to go up and growth is going to go down because of that budget. Would you like to apologise for this Labour government?
No, I'm delighted. I'm having a lovely time.
Were you happy about low growth, national security and more inflation? Don't you have any buyer's remorse?
No, absolutely not. It's wonderful. I'm delighted. I think it's going really well. I'm very proud of what people are achieving. And as a side benefit, it's making some of my least favourite people terribly cross, which is always a nice, little fringe sprinkle.
Would that include farmers who are watching this programme tonight, devastated at the prospect of the government's IHT tax raid?
I'm actually not in favour of the inheritance tax on farms because I don't think it's going to raise the amount of money that they think it's going to. I think what's really difficult is that the more toxic we make that conversation by using our platforms to make it a right versus left issue, the harder it is for them to actually get into the conversation and negotiate sensibly. So I really hope that the heat will come out of that conversation and they can then negotiate in a way that is going to preserve farming, because farming is a real stalwart of what it is to be British.
Now, it's always great to have Rebecca on the show because she makes a hell of a lot of good points. And one great point she made was mentioning Brexit Annunciata. And isn't this double standards from critics of this Labour government? The Brexiteers who are furious about petitions for a second referendum. Those self-same people now want a second election.
I don't actually remember anyone being furious about the petition. I think we just didn't take it particularly seriously.
I think the petition ran to 6 million people.
It did have 6 million people. It took them a lot longer to get there than this one has to the 1.5 million in 24 hours. There are different magnitudes of speed at which people have decided to sign, but I will happily say that, the internet is more widespread and people are more active. But one of the messages coming across strongly is not only is this being shared far and wide by people who did vote Labour, which I think Labour should take very seriously, but also it's people sharing because they feel scared to protest, to say what they think in public, to share what they think on social media, that people are very concerned about the restraints on freedom of speech, and that this is a legal way of getting their message across. And that in and of itself is a problem for Labour, that they are so distrusted not to send the police knocking on your door.
OK, listen, you get the last word, Rebecca.
I don't think that most normal people feel that way. I think when we work in the media, often end up sitting in the fringes. I'm telling you that the average person on the street does not feel that if they say, oh, not sure about Keir Starmer, the police are coming knocking for them. And I'm not sure how helpful it is to encourage this culture of fear. You are not in danger for saying, I don't like Keir Starmer. You should say it if you don't like him. I agree it's important that people should be able to sign whatever petition they want, as long as it's not inciting violence against anybody else. Absolutely have at it. But I think everybody, whether it's Brexit or the election, needs to be a grown-up. And as I said previously, I would say, if you are unhappy, go and make the world around you a better place rather than sitting on the internet and whining about it.
One of my favourite political broadcasters, Rebecca Reed, always a treat to have you on the show. Do come back soon. My thanks to broadcaster and author Rebecca Reed. Thanks to Annunciata Rees-Mogg as well from my all-star panel. She returns shortly. But next up, are Harry and Meghan going to spend this Christmas apart? I'll be asking my top royal insider next.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. Storm Bert just slowly starting to edge away, so we've still got an evening of strong winds across the UK, further rain in places too, and it remains blustery on Monday as well. And we can see Bert there just anchored to the north of the UK, slowly pushing its way eastwards, so staying windy for the next 24 hours or so, but it does eventually calm down. We do have heavy rain across parts of England and Wales pushing its way southeastwards, blustery showers following, strong winds across Northern Ireland, Scotland, 60, 70 miles an hour possible, so there could be some disruption over the coming night as well. Temperatures under clearer spells dipping into single figures, so a fresher start to Monday for many. Early rain across the southeast starting to clear, but it's an unsettled start across parts of Scotland first thing. Outbreaks of heavy rain in places, strong winds as well, gusts of 40, 50 miles an hour, but only slowly pushes away. Northern Ireland also seeing frequent heavy showers, something a little drier and brighter for northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, but blustery showers pushing in from the west. Rain soon clearing southeast England, but remaining quite cloudy here with some patchy, showery rain in places. And through the day, it's a day of sunny spells and showers for many, though showers frequent across the north of the UK, particularly Scotland, where we'll see some longer spells of rain, the rain turning to snow over the higher ground as some colder air moves in here too. So an unsettled, blustery day to come for many. Temperatures are lower compared to Sunday, generally 7 to 11 Celsius, so actually around average for the time of year. For Tuesday morning, the risk of some showers after an early frost in places, and generally a drier, brighter day with lighter winds for many, but still windy across northeast Scotland into the afternoon. Perhaps some rain approaching the far southwest later on in the day. Temperatures near average, feeling a little cooler towards the middle of the week, and generally remaining a little unsettled.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And
the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Something very special at 10 o'clock. You won't believe this. The boss of Woke Jaguar, who have been responsible for a disastrous ad campaign which has destroyed the company, has launched an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. So I'll be tackling that story in a Take at 10 special. It's pretty spicy. 25 minutes from now, you won't want to miss it. But first, a royal expert has told the Sun newspaper that Prince Harry may spend Christmas away from his wife, Meghan Markle. Speaking to the paper, veteran royal journalist Phil Dampier said the Duke of Sussex's charity work and his desire to be with his old friends could see the couple on different continents over at least some of the Christmas period. Dampier went on to say, I'm sure he's lacking some mates that he can go out for a beer with and truly relax. The more he does things on his own and carves out some new projects, the more likely it is that he can heal himself and eventually some of the divisions within his family. Well, let's get reaction to this from one of the most respected royal commentators in the world, broadcaster and journalist and regular pundit on Fox News in the United States, Hilary Fordwich. Hilary, good to see you again. Do you notice a distancing between the couple? Is there trouble in paradise?
Well, smashing seeing you again, Mark. Thank you for having me. And the operative word you quoted there from Phil was may. I don't think there's anything definite that anybody knows yet, but let's look at all the signals. They actually are purportedly, definitely Meghan is going to be spending Christmas with her mother, Doria, and that is in Santa Barbara. Well, Santa Barbara is a long way and a different Christmas from Sandringham. They have not been invited by the royal family. So if I might, I normally try to keep my personal feelings out of things, but if I might just say, as an English girl living in America, you know, so much is so different here, but I came here very young. Harry's life and the life of a royal, and think of all that was Sandringham, it's so vastly different from America, Mark. And all I can say is whether it's, you know, when it's sunny and 85 degrees and it's far more likely that you'd want to go and golf, not that he's a golfer, than you would, you know, be in your Christmas boots and gloves and doing things that we do in England at Christmas. It doesn't feel like Christmas in California. Trust me, I know that because oftentimes it can be, you know, 60 degrees in Washington. I think, yes, Phil's absolutely right. Not only is he, as he's verbalized, he misses his mates, but I'm sure when you hear the expression, you can take a boy out of England, but you can't take the England out of a boy. All his entire history and his culture and his family and everything that he ever stood for, let alone the mother that he has always loved, aren't there. What does he have? I'll just give you one direct quote from somebody who knows somebody who shared this with me. He just said, Harry said, that because of course he spent Christmas with Doria before, and he just said, not the same. So you can take it from there, how he feels when he says it's just not the same.
Now, Hilary, you correctly predicted the outcome of the US elections, which surprised many people and contradicted most of the polls. What about Harry and Meghan? How long do you give that marriage?
Well, actually, and on your show, I predicted, remember, that Biden would step down, and I said shortly, and it was the next day, actually. Thank you very much for giving me that. But two things here. I actually am going to quote here Prince William, that people, I give great kudos to him, that people on the inside have said that they've heard him say, and I think this is so magnanimous of him. I'll quote Prince William's thoughts on this, and this is exactly actually how I would take the liberty of saying I feel, and I bet a lot of the British public feels, and that is, he said, I hope I was wrong. Remember that he warned his brother Harry. He warned him about marrying somebody so very, very different, vastly different, with different goals, different aspirations, different background, different absolutely everything. And I would say this, in the business world, Mark, we always say the best predictor of future performance is past productivity. So you hire someone based on what they've done, right? So the best predictor on the future is what's happened in the past. Yeah. Meghan Markle has dumped her country when she married Prince Harry. She dumped her friends. She dumped her own family, like her father and her half-sister and her in-laws. She's dumped her dog when she went to England. She's actually dumped every single friend that she had. So she has a history of dumping those around her. There you go. There's the track record. Let's see what will happen.
Watch this space. Hilary Fordwich there, who, let me tell you, is the sage of all things business, royal and political, suggesting that at some point, potentially, Harry could be dumped by his own wife. Stay with us, Hilary. I'd love to bring in Kulveer Ranger, if I can, former advisor to Boris Johnson, member of the House of Lords. Kulveer, very sad that, in a sense, Prince Harry faces a tug of love between his family here in the UK and his family in Hollywood, California.
Well, in no way would I want to contradict a sage like Hillary, but and I'll speak at it from a different perspective as a father and a father of 2 young children. And that's why I look at Harry, and he's got 2 beautiful young children, Archie and Lilibet. And it does completely change. It did for me. I'm sure it changes it for many people when they have children. Your priorities, what you think is important, even what Christmas means and where you'll celebrate Christmas. And I think you'll move heaven and earth, wherever you are, to bring your family, your core family, as much as you can with his wife, together and celebrate that special time of year with the children, because those memories, those activities you do, even when the kids are too small for them to remember, you will remember with all the recordings, photos and things that we take nowadays. So I think there's a heart that will pull him to be with his children through Christmas and with his wife. And I think for the future, I think they're still carving out their roles there. We can see that, and I agree with Hillary on her example about where business ethos goes. Past performance, future predictor. But also, Meghan is quite ruthless. She has, in some ways, succeeded at what she has set her ambitions to do, and I think that might look at her potential for success in the future and what she sets her mind to do.
Hillary, last word, couple of seconds if you can.
I think that's absolutely all accurate. Totally accurate about the children. I think many parents and all of us feel that way. However, if that was what kept people together, there wouldn't be any divorces.
There you go. Listen, brilliant stuff. Hillary, always great to have you on the show. My thanks to business and royal and political commentator, the excellent Hillary Fordwich, a regular on, of course, Fox News in the States and a regular on Mark Dolan tonight here in the UK. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you so much to Kulveer as well, who returns at 10 o'clock for that Nigel Farage battle with the boss of Jaguar, a special take at 10. But next up, folks, what about this? With his controversial and confrontational position on Russia, has Sir Keir Starmer put a target on our back? Could Vladimir Putin shut down Britain with a devastating cyber attack? I'll be asking one of Britain's best connected experts next.
Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yeah, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforced in the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line. And I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
OK, folks, at 10 o'clock, the woke boss of Jaguar has launched an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. That is a Take at 10 special in 15 minutes' time. You will not want to miss it. But first, the senior cabinet minister, Pat McFadden, is expected to warn of a possible imminent and devastating Russian cyber attack on British infrastructure and businesses that could shut down the power grids and deal a hammer blow to the economy. So how badly could a cyber attack on Britain affect you and I? And has Sir Keir Starmer's robust position on Russia put a target on our back? Well, let's get the views of one of Britain's most respected historians. I think he's the most published historian in the country, Martin Whittock. Martin, good to see you again. How bad could a cyber attack on this country be? What would it look like?
Well, the Russians have a history of what they call asymmetric warfare, the kind of thing that pits things like this kind of technology, against much larger foes. Goes back a long way. We've seen cyber attacks in the Baltic states. We saw, of course, activities by this very unit that we've been warned about. This is Unit 29155 of the GRU, which is the Russian intelligence agency. We'll also expect to see something maybe by the SVR, which is the Foreign Intelligence Service. So the Russians have a history of using these kind of covert operations to try to intimidate people. Recently, there have been attacks on some local councils in the UK that we think may have been with the Russians' fingerprints over them. Over the weekend, there's been attacks on the South Koreans because they've been monitoring North Korean involvement in Ukraine. So the Russians have a backstory of using these kind of dark arts against opponents, attacks on the Baltic states, as I say, and also outsourcing some of this as well. So it will not necessarily be done by units like 29155, although they're likely to do it. But organised crime gangs, mercenaries, the Russians outsource a lot of this kind of troublemaking. It's to basically discomfort its opponents.
And what is the worst that can happen? What would the most catastrophic scenario be in the context of a cyber attack? Because I've got people watching this show and listening to them, and myself included, we don't really know what that means. Very abstract, and it's cyber attack. What's the real world reality of that? I mean, is it sort of the NHS closes down? What happens?
Well, they certainly may attack things like the NHS. We've seen things happen recently that we think were linked to at least some perhaps organised crime groups linked to Russia. They could attack infrastructure in terms of energy infrastructure. And I'm not talking about bombs here. I'm not talking about explosives. I'm talking about the disruption of the kind of intelligent life now that runs our world, in terms of computer systems and software programs and so on and so forth. They could target that. But what we have to remember is we too have targeters as well. I mean, we're not asleep on the job here. Both we and the Americans have been aware of this for a very, very long time. And although we need to be really alert and really careful, and that's the kind of warning going out now about the kind of attacks that can be launched on infrastructures in terms of intelligence attacks by 29155 on computer systems, we have our own people working on this. So I really must assure viewers that there will be people in the British and the Western and the US intelligence agencies who are right on the case of this. That doesn't mean to say we should be blasé or relaxed, but it means to say people are aware of this and we are putting a lot of time and effort into counterintelligence moves.
Well, I think that's right. Everything's on computers now, and you've got traffic lights, and you've got the NHS and hospital appointments, and you've got the lights, whether they come on and switch off at night. Everything is now controlled by computers. How worried should we be? Let's also bring in, if we can, the former Labour advisor and a man that has the ear of Sir Keir Starmer, my brilliant pundit tonight, Paul Richards. Paul, you know the Prime Minister well. How concerned is he about this Russian threat?
Well, very concerned, and it is a genuine threat. And you've seen pronouncements by the Defence Secretary, John Healey. You've also seen this speech being trailed by Pat McFadden. My dear late father served in the RAF during the Cold War, and he would tell me that the Russian tactic was always to try and see where the weaknesses were, just constantly testing the air defences, you know, just putting planes just the wrong side of a line just to see what happened and see what our response would be. This is just the modern version of that same Russian tactic, which is to sniff out weakness, to see where the West is vulnerable and to exploit any weaknesses that there are. So when Starmer talks tough and when the UK takes a tough stance on this and we are willing to retaliate with our own cyber warfare, that's because strongmen characters like Putin, this is the only thing they do understand. So this is not a moment for appeasement, and there's certainly no sense that anything we're doing is going to make the situation better or worse. This is
briefly, if you can, Paul, do you think this will accelerate the government's plans to boost defence spending?
Well, I think, as I've always said, we need to get up to that 2.5% sooner rather than later. And I've said that the most important institution in our lives right now is the Ukrainian army. They have to succeed in repelling the Russian forces out of their territories, and that's in all of our interests. Because if Putin succeeds in invading a country, then who's next? Moldova, Estonia, it just keeps on coming.
Martin, the new US president-elect has a history of trying to engage with global bad actors like Kim Jong-un of North Korea, President Xi of China, and Vladimir Putin. Is a third world war more or less likely since the election of Donald Trump?
I personally don't think it has majorly moved the dial, to be honest. I think he is likely to try to force a land for peace deal on the Ukrainians and on the Russians, for that matter, which will cost the Ukrainians a significant amount, whereas the Russians may be prepared to accept Plan B, if you like, taking the Donbass, taking Crimea. I think that we mustn't over-egg the threat or the fear. We need to be wary, we need to be careful, but we mustn't be afraid, we mustn't be cowed, because as the last speaker just said, Putin uses these kind of bullying tactics. He nuclear saber rattles in order to frighten people and to make them do his will. So I personally think we need to stand firm on this, and I think we may be surprised that the election of Trump does not actually destabilise the situation as much as it's feared.
Martin, sensible, wise words. Always a delight to have you on the show. We'll catch up soon. Thank you to Paul Richards, who returns at 10. And let me tell you what I'm doing in just 2 minutes' time. The woke boss of Jaguar has launched an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. I'll be dealing with this car crash in slow motion in an extra long Take at 10 special. You won't want to miss it. Keep it GB News.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. Storm Bert just slowly starting to edge away, so we've still got an evening of strong winds across the UK, further rain in places too, and it remains blustery on Monday as well. And we can see Bert there just anchored to the north of the UK, slowly pushing its way eastwards, so staying windy for the next 24 hours or so, but it does eventually calm down. We do have heavy rain across parts of England and Wales pushing its way southeastwards, blustery showers following, strong winds across Northern Ireland, Scotland, 60, 70 miles an hour possible, so there could be some disruption over the coming night as well. Temperatures under clearer spells dipping into single figures, so a fresher start to Monday for many. Early rain across the southeast starting to clear, but it's an unsettled start across parts of Scotland first thing. Outbreaks of heavy rain in places, strong winds as well, gusts of 40, 50 miles an hour, but only slowly pushes away. Northern Ireland also seeing frequent heavy showers, something a little drier and brighter for northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, but blustery showers pushing in from the west. Rain soon clearing southeast England, but remaining quite cloudy here with some patchy, showery rain in places. And through the day, it's a day of sunny spells and showers for many, though showers frequent across the north of the UK, particularly Scotland, where we'll see some longer spells of rain, the rain turning to snow over the higher ground as some colder air moves in here too. So an unsettled, blustery day to come for many. Temperatures are lower compared to Sunday, generally 7 to 11 Celsius. So actually around average for the time of year. For Tuesday morning, the risk of some showers after an early frost in places, and generally a drier, brighter day with lighter winds for many, but still windy across northeast Scotland into the afternoon. Perhaps some rain approaching the far southwest later on in the day. Temperatures near average, feeling a little cooler towards the middle of the week, and generally remaining a little unsettled.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, following their disastrous politically correct ad campaign, the woke boss of Jaguar launches an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. I'll be dealing with this car crash in slow motion in an extra long Take at 10 special. You won't want to miss it. Fury, as it's revealed some prisoners earn more than the officers who guard them. I'll get reaction from former Prisons Minister Anne Widdecombe. Plus, as she moves on from her popular Daily Express column, Anne has an exciting new project. She shall reveal all shortly. Also, tomorrow's newspaper front pages. In the company of tonight's top pundits, Head of Communications at the Popular Conservatives, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, former top Labour advisor and a man close to the Prime Minister, Paul Richards, and former Boris advisor, remember him? Lord Coulvier Ranger, of course. Brilliant guy. So look, a great panel, I think you'll agree, and they are raring to go. The woke boss of Jaguar cars attacks Nigel Farage. I'll be tackling that issue in my Take at 10 straight after the news headlines and Katie Bowen.
Mark, thank you. A very good evening. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has said that he has spoken to Welsh First Minister Eluned Morgan about flooding in Wales, as 4 people have now died as a result of the weather brought to the UK by Storm Bert. Eluned Morgan has said that it has been a really difficult weekend, describing the impact as absolutely devastating. The storm has brought more than 80% of November's average monthly rainfall in less than 48 hours in some areas, with more than 100 flood alerts in place across the UK. A major incident has been declared in South Wales, where between 200 and 300 properties have been affected by today's flooding, and a bridge which was replaced after Storm Dennis has been completely washed away. Sir Keir Starmer said in his post on X that he is receiving updates on Storm Bert as it develops across the UK. Large parts of the Midlands are under floodwater too, after the Kyer Brook in Tenbury Wells rose and caused a wall to collapse, flooding the Worcestershire town. Yellow warnings for wind and rain are in place for western parts of Scotland and Wales, South East England and Northern Ireland. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall says NATO countries are involved in a hidden cyber war with Russia. That comes as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster will warn that Russia could turn the lights off and won't think twice about exploiting defence gaps in the UK. Pat McFadden is expected to give the warning to NATO members next week. In a speech, he'll urge countries to bolster cybersecurity and not underestimate the threat of cyber warfare from Russia. It follows warnings from experts last night who urged Britain to remain firm and stand strong against Vladimir Putin's threats. Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Kevin Hollenrake told GB News that Labour need to increase the UK's defence spending now.
One of the highest spenders in NATO, constantly have been, but we recognise there are growing threats around the world, and that's why we committed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And that is a commitment not matched by the Labour government. They've made some kind of general commitment to get there at some point in the future, but the threat is now, and we should bolster our defences now. We made that firm commitment. Labour should do the same.
Elsewhere, MPs in favour of legalising assisted dying in the UK have said that the bill has enough support to pass in the Commons, the Telegraph newspaper is reporting. It comes as Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood made a strongly worded intervention in the debate, saying the state should never offer death as a service. In a letter to constituents, Ms Mahmood said she was profoundly concerned by the legislation, not just for religious reasons, but because it could create a slippery slope towards death on demand. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has declined to say whether he will back the bill, arguing that he doesn't want to pressure MPs. And just briefly, musical blockbuster Wicked has surpassed Gladiator 2 and Paddington in Peru to secure the biggest opening weekend of 2024 for Vue Cinemas. The cinema chain said the film, which stars Oscar-nominated actress Cynthia Erivo and Grammy-winning pop star Ariana Grande, has had the largest opening weekend for a stage musical adaptation in its history. The 2-part film, which was released in the UK on Friday, is up 60% on Les Miserables' opening weekend in 2012 and 3 times larger than the 2022 film adaptation of Matilda. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Katie. Busy show tonight. We've got tomorrow's papers and the pundits with their reaction, plus waiting in the wings, a furious Anne Widdecombe. But first, my take at 10. You know what they say, if you're in a hole, stop digging. Well, following their disastrous new advertising campaign, it would seem the management of car giant Jaguar have dug a hole so deep they can almost see the Earth's crust. This once great automotive brand saw 100 years of design and engineering excellence evaporate in 30 seconds with this. An advert featuring a diverse cast of actors dressed as Teletubbies getting out of an elevator and prancing round like a bunch of art school rejects. Viewers are told to live vivid. A numpty in a red suit makes a mess with a paintbrush. Then someone who's either a man or a woman or God knows what takes out a massive hammer, presumably a metaphor for what they've done to the brand. And the final messaging of the ad is copy nothing. Well, no one is going to copy that debacle, because this campaign will likely see this iconic British company go bust in a matter of weeks. Now, you could argue that all publicity is good publicity. The advert has been watched 150 million times. You could argue that everyone is talking about it. Well, they are, but not in a good way. I mean, everyone's talking about Prince Andrew, Rachel Reeves and P. Diddy, aren't they? But that's not necessarily a good thing either. The ad is such a complete disaster, it doesn't even feature a car. And the timing couldn't be worse, as almost 80 million Americans reject woke nonsense with the election of Donald Trump. In come those geniuses at the marketing department of Jaguar with a diversity, equity and inclusion masterclass that the Western world is finally turning its back on. It feels like this advert came out the day after woke died. Hilariously, the management are digging in. Rawdon Glover, the managing director of Jaguar, who will no doubt be receiving his P45 in tomorrow's post, defended the rebrand, of course he did, and said criticism of its marketing campaign featured, and I quote, vile hatred and intolerance. Well, of course, that's always the default argument of woke progressives, isn't it? If you disagree with me, you are hateful. Not really, Mr. Glover. The public hate this indulgent, finger-wagging crap and are intolerant to the wanton vandalism of a proud and uniquely British brand. This is a brand famously favoured by Inspector Morse. James Bond. There you go, look at that machine and look at that suit, by the way. And, of course, cheeky wheeler dealer Arthur Daly, who also loved his Jag. I love Jaguar as a brand. When I grew up, Jaguar was the brand of choice for a successful businessman. And yes, I'm going to say businessman. It was a man's car for an older gentleman who had achieved things in his life. But Jaguar don't want those people anymore, apparently. Oh, no. They don't even want vibrant women, attractive older ladies who also, these days, love Jags, like the broadcasting legend Liz Kershaw. Va va voom. In an interview with the Sunday Times, the Jaguar boss doubled down by attacking his own customers, saying the average age of a Jaguar driver is, and I quote, quite old and getting older. He says we've got to access a completely different audience. In other words, older, successful customers get out of the way because we've got 20-somethings to sell our cars to, not noticing that these 20-somethings still live with their mum and dad and ride around on an e-bike. The business graveyard is full of companies who took their core customer base for granted or even attacked them, like Bud Light in America, who basically called their customers ignorant rednecks. How about Gillette, who called the men who bought their razors toxically masculine? The contempt for your customer base reminds me of the BBC, sidelining hugely popular stars like Sue Barker, Steve Wright and Ken Bruce, perhaps because, like an 80s Jag, they too had too many miles on the clock. And Jaguar management have gone from bad to worse by making this issue political, attacking none other than Reform UK leader and GBNews star and a good friend of mine, Nigel Farage. The Jaguar boss, who must be suffering whiplash this evening, let's hope his airbag exploded, suggested that people like Mr. Farage are not, and I quote, important to the car maker's vision. Following Nigel's criticism of the ad campaign, the boss said, we've got to access a completely different audience. That audience isn't centred around people of the demographic of Mr. Farage. Well, Mr. Farage is in his 60s and, in my view, looking damn good on it. But Jaguar don't want people like that. Do they think that Nigel and his ilk are pale, male and stale? You tell me. Now, we know about political correctness in the public sector, don't we? With 100 genders, climate hysteria, the love of open borders, and everything seen through the prism of race. But it's perhaps more shocking to see companies slip into this ideology. Did Jaguar forget that it's their job to make money by selling cars? Don't forget, this terrible advert doesn't even feature one of their products. You couldn't make it up. Now, the damage done to Jaguar is incalculable. No mechanic would fancy that rebuild. This whole debacle reflects the massive distance now between the public Ordinary people, you and me, and the new ruling elites who dominate high positions in the media, in government and in business. The Jaguar ad campaign is a car crash in slow motion. This brand has broken down and reached the end of the road. They have slashed their own tyres, and now the scrap heap beckons. They even got rid of the famous creature that represents their brand, the Jaguar, a powerful, fearless, wild cat. And what have they replaced it with? A load of pussies. Your reaction, I can't believe the story. I can't believe that the Jaguar boss is still digging. But if you want to defend Jaguar and their new strategy, do let me know. If you've watched the ad and are now going to buy a Jag, I'd love to hear from you. gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits. We have Head of Communications at the Popular Conservatives, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, former Labour Party advisor Paul Richards, and Conservative peer and former Boris Johnson advisor Lord Coulvier Ranger. Paul, let me start with you. I mean, this feels like a Gerald Ratner moment, doesn't it?
Well, it either is a Gerald Ratner moment, a total disaster, but I have a sneaking suspicion it might be genius, actually, because the world is now talking about this car brand. And when they actually get around to launching their new car, the backdrop is that we've all been talking about it for months. So I wonder if it's actually a lot cleverer than we think.
That's interesting. Coulvier, do you think that this could be a case of all publicity is good publicity?
Well, they've definitely got us talking. But, Mark, on this matter, I think you and I might disagree. So, copy nothing is actually a direct quote from the founder of Jaguar, Sir William Lyons. The Jaguar logo itself is alive and well in the new car. And the new cars that they're going to be launching, there was a secret spy drop about a few weeks ago, look very lush, shall we say. These are the guys who brought us the award-winning Range Rover and Land Rovers that have been hugely successful. So I think they might be onto something. They're changing the model. They're changing their tone. They are causing a bit of controversy, but change always does that, doesn't it?
But Coulvier, what happened to his pussy?
Well, let's see. I think the cars are coming out in Miami in a few weeks' time. And then, yes,
it's
I know.
A Jaguar, not a tabby cat. You know, the powerful machine, and that's why the symbol of a Jaguar was a wild cat. They've axed the cat.
Well, the symbol of a Jaguar to me was Simon Templar. Actually, I grew up with him driving the Jaguar. My father had a Jaguar, so I'm passionate about this car and this brand. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
OK. What do you think about this, Annunziata? Have you spent much time in Jaguar cars?
I don't know if I've ever been in a Jaguar in my life, but they always looked very beautiful, very classic, and importantly to me, very British. And I feel incredibly let down at this advert that it doesn't represent the car, the technology and the ability of our country to produce great goods. And simultaneously, an advert comes out from Volvo. I now want a Volvo. I can't actually justify or afford either brand of car, but they had a human, emotive, beautiful advert with an actual car in it that featured a family, that had safety. It was done by the cinematographer of Oppenheimer. It's a genuinely beautiful advert, but it also makes you want the car, and surely that is important.
Loving my pundits tonight. They return at 10:30 with instant reaction to tomorrow's front pages. We've got some amazing stories. Plus, are Ed Davies' comedy videos on TikTok bringing politics into disrepute? Plus, a shocking Channel 4 stitch-up of Queen Camilla, casting her as the evil stepmother. We'll bring you some shocking and outrageous clips from that documentary which has just aired. But speaking of fury, anger as it's revealed that some prisoners earn more than the officers who guard them. I'll get reaction from former Prisons Minister Anne Widdecombe. Plus, as she moves on from her Daily Express column, Anne has an exciting new project. She shall reveal all next.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think?
Morning. I think we have failed young drivers as a society, and we need to train them better and train them earlier. I think that the idea of stopping them carrying passengers for 6 months is a good idea because you've got peer pressure within a car. So yes, but I think graduated licenses are really difficult. You've got what we call the 3 E's, which is education, educating kids to drive earlier, and engineering, which is making roads better and safer, and then comes enforcement at the end of it. So I think we're failing in these two first ones, the education and the enforcement. I put my kids, all three of them, through a thing called Young Driver, which allows under 17s to drive on private land with ADI instructors and learn the craft of driving and all the below the dashboard stuff and hazard awareness long before they try and do this very compressed period of time to learn about driving. I think we're failing them. So I want to see it in schools, and I want to see them being taught much, much earlier.
Nobody's actually pointing the finger of blame, I think, at the young driver, but maybe young drivers don't understand how different it is. You feel you can drive, you've passed your test, and then a load of your friends get in the back, and suddenly the mood is different, the pressure on you as a driver is very different, showing off, just larking around and having a great time. Aisha, how do you feel about the fact that clearly young drivers do need to be protected almost from themselves, don't they?
Well, I do agree with some of what Quentin has just said, especially about starting early and especially about talking, getting young people used to the dangers of being on the road.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for the Newsmaker, and The Telegraph has revealed that Britain's highest paid inmates are earning more on average than the prison officers who guard them. Last year, the highest paid prisoner had a salary of £46,000. Some prisoners in low-security open prisons are allowed to work outside the prison as long as they are back in jail by the end of the day. So is this a smart example of rehabilitation, or does it make a mockery of the victims of crime? Well, who better to ask than former Prisons Minister and Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. Anne, I understand that when you were Prisons Minister, you visited every prison property out there, which is back-breaking work. You were very committed to the idea of rehabilitation. Do you think people in jail should be making money?
Yes, if they're in open prisons, I do think that, because we know that there are three big things which contribute to not reoffending. One is that you have a home to go to. Two is that you've retained some family ties. And the big one, that you've got a job and income. And if you can walk straight out through the prison gates into a job, that is a plus. But let me say one thing very, very quickly. You know, there is they have to pay tax for a start, you know, just as you and I do. They have to pay national insurance, and they have to pay a victim's levy, which can be up to 40% of their earnings. So don't run away with the idea, you know, that they're amassing riches. They're not. And this is people who are earning at that level. You can earn within a prison, but people who are earning at that level are those in open prisons who are preparing to re-enter the community.
Although, Anne, what kind of message does it send out that you can pull in thousands of pounds a month having potentially committed a serious crime? I mean, imagine if you know, you were the victim of an armed robbery or some kind of assault, and you bump into the guy that did it to you in Tesco.
Oh, well, you run that risk anyway. When he's released, you're going to run that risk anyway. So, I mean, I don't think that really comes into it. And as I say, they have to pay a 40% victim's levy. You know, so if I were a victim, I would be thinking, well, good, you know, good. At least victims are going to get something out of that.
Well, indeed. And I understand that some of the work that they do is lorry driving, for example, because apparently that's a low security risk. I suppose we do want, don't we, inmates to begin their careers again so that when they're completely free, they can make a contribution and rebuild their lives.
Well, that is the whole point. I mean, that's what rehabilitation is all about. It's not just keeping people quiet in prison, which I have to say, you know, some governors regrettably used to think it was. Is also about preparing them for the great outside, which is why I believe strongly in vocational training in prison, so that people can actually get a qualification while they're in prison and then use it when they get outside. The last thing you want is somebody coming out, no job, no home, very few family ties, and thinking, oh, well, you know, I know how I'll make a few quid, I'll go and do drugs or something. You know, come on.
Well, indeed. Now, Anne, let me say that I've always enjoyed your column in The Express. It's been going many years, and you've got a great relationship with your viewers. You've chosen a new platform that gives you more freedom than ever. But I guess you're gonna miss those Express readers, aren't you?
Oh, yes. I mean, I'll be quite honest about it now that it is out there. I didn't jump, I was pushed. And contract was terminated perfectly properly with due notice and all the rest of it. But so I am very sad. I'm very sad because I've had a relationship with those readers now for over 20 years. And I did rather assume, but you never should assume anything when you're a freelancer. I did rather assume that I was there for some time to come. But anyway, never mind.
And let me, I'm not one to, you know, be asleep at the wheel. If there's a story here, I want to sniff it out. Do you know what was behind this decision to let you go?
They said, and I quote, that it was purely economic. But the fact is that I'm the only major weekday columnist who's going. But never mind.
And what have you done? Are you? Is it your politics? Has the Express gone woke?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure, but I have been opposing their crusade on assisted dying. That could be something to do with it. Gary Jones, who's left as the editor, was hugely in favour of free speech. I could oppose crusades. I could oppose leaders. I could do anything I liked. But I don't know. As I say, they've done it properly. They've given me due notice. It's all been very courteous. But I was going to say, you don't, when you're in that situation, don't look back. You say, OK, where do I go now? And what do I want to do? And I want to still get my opinions out there. Now, GBNews is fine, but we have only a very little time. So I've set up a Substack. Yeah, Widdicombe's gone online. I've actually set up a Substack. In which I can produce essays and can produce a very small comment as well. And so it's like a free, well, it's free, but some of it's paid, a daily express for readers to have, like my column, all over again, but online.
Well, I think it's really exciting because Substack is essentially a publisher and all you need is an internet connection and you go on the website, you search for Anne Widdicombe, and people can get your weekly articles, your daily articles. If you've got strong views on a big story that's breaking, then you'll be writing it and it goes on that website and it will give you a lot of freedom. And the other great thing that we don't have enough of in the media is long-form content, Anne, because you probably had a word count at the Express, I would have thought.
I have had a word count at the Express, and interestingly, when my agent saw my first effort on the Substack, he said, this is better than the Express because you can actually write as much as you like. And so you're not always having to curtail what you want to say. You think, I have to take that out. Well, you don't have to take it out. So you can do a long piece, you can do a short piece, whatever it might be. Additionally, for Reform UK people, or for those even looking at them, I'm explaining every Wednesday, Woody on Wednesday, I'm explaining a reform policy. Because the question I get most of all from people is, well, you know, what would reform do? What are your policies? Well, you can find out every Wednesday.
So brilliant. So you're definitely going to be writing an article every Wednesday, but possibly extra articles on top of that as well across the week. Is that right?
Oh, there's Woody on Wednesday, and there's Weekend Woody. And Weekend Woody is all completely free content, and it's much shorter comment. It's a bit like the ones that go round the outside of my main article in the Express. So I can just have a go where I think something stupid's happened.
So we've got Widdy Wednesday, Weekend Widdy, any day, Anne. I mean, this is an embarrassment of riches. You're going to be the queen of all media, Anne.
Well, it's a nice thought. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, it's gathering quite a lot of traction already.
And listen, I've been doing this show for many years. You are the most popular contributor to this programme. I'm always bored of the emails of my viewers saying how great you are, which is such an overstatement. But there you go. We love having you on the show. So here you are, retained by Mark Dolan tonight, locked in, and now free to say what you really think on Substack. So listen, let's have a look at how viewers can tap into your Substack. We've got Anne.Widdicombe at substack.com. Anne.Widdicombe at...
No, you're wrong.
Go on, what is it?
All wrong. AnneWiddicombe.substack.com. Anne Widdicombe, all one word, .substack.com.
AnneWiddicombe.substack.com. There you go. And of course, the great thing, Anne, is you can go on to Substack. Can you tell I don't know much about the internet? You go on to Substack and then search your name, and I doubtless it will come up.
Now that will take you straight through to my very own Substack.
Brilliant. And of course, it's Anne without an E. Anne, I'm your #1 fan. See you in a week's time. Congratulations on the big new project. There you go. AnneWiddicombe.substack.com. We got there in the end, didn't we? Listen, folks, we've got so much to get through in this hour. Channel 4 attacked for being so critical of Queen Camilla in a bombshell new interview. Plus, is Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, bringing politics into disrepute with his comedy TikTok videos. Plus, tomorrow's papers, some great front pages. See you in 2.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. Storm Bert just slowly starting to edge away, so we've still got an evening of strong winds across the UK, further rain in places too, and it remains blustery on Monday as well. And we can see Bert there just anchored to the north of the UK, slowly pushing its way eastward, so staying windy for the next 24 hours or so, but it does eventually calm down. We do have heavy rain across parts of England and Wales pushing its way southeastwards, blustery showers following, strong winds across Northern Ireland, Scotland, 60, 70 miles an hour possible, so there could be some disruption over the coming night as well. Temperatures under clearer spells dipping into single figures, so a fresher start to Monday for many. Early rain across the southeast starting to clear, but it's an unsettled start across parts of Scotland first thing. Outbreaks of heavy rain in places, strong winds as well, gusts of 40, 50 miles an hour, but only slowly pushes away. Northern Ireland also seeing frequent heavy showers, something a little drier and brighter for northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, but blustery showers pushing in from the west, rain soon clearing southeast England, but remaining quite cloudy here with some patchy, showery rain in places. And through the day, it's a day of sunny spells and showers for many, though showers frequent across the north of the UK, particularly Scotland, where we'll see some longer spells of rain, the rain turning to snow over the higher ground as some colder air moves in here too. So an unsettled, blustery day to come for many. Temperatures lower compared to Sunday, generally 7 to 11 Celsius, so actually around average for the time of year. For Tuesday morning, the risk of some showers after an early frost in places, and generally a drier, brighter day with lighter winds for many, but still windy across northeast Scotland into the afternoon. Perhaps some rain approaching the far southwest later on in the day. Temperatures near average, feeling a little cooler towards the middle of the week, and generally remaining a little unsettled.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. OK, folks, 10:30, time for tomorrow's front pages. Thank you, Faye. We'll start with the newspaper cabinet split over assisted dying as vote row deepens. Daily Star. Bert was just a start. 5 storms by Christmas. Also, daytime drinking surges. Well, is it any wonder? The Daily Mirror now. Shame and horror of my dad attacking my mum has never left me. That is the actor Patrick Stewart discussing his background of domestic violence in the company of Queen Camilla. UK cosmetic surgery hell. I was an hour from dying. End this madness. A mum tells how she almost died after a botched Brazilian butt lift. Bonnie Louise Cooper, who chose a British beauty clinic also used by Katie Price, said this industry is madness. Now the Royal College of Surgeons has backed the Mirror's campaign for more regulations. Metro, enough. Every 11 minutes, a woman or girl is killed in their own home. Now it's time for action to end the epidemic of violence. A really important campaign there from Metro. The Sun, 3 lines exclusive. 30 years of shirt. Bobby Moore's missing 1966 England World Cup top has been tracked down and found in Wales. Good news, there you go. It's got a bit of a happy ending, hasn't it? The Daily Telegraph, ex-Met boss urges non-crime hate review. Former Metropolitan Police Commissioner has urged ministers to review the use of non-crime hate incidents in the wake of an investigation into the Telegraph journalist Alison Pearson. Storm Bert batters Britain is the other headline, with the shocking photograph of a lady just sweeping water off her doorstep in Devon. Assisted dying bill likely to pass, say MPs. And 2/3 of companies slash hiring plans after Reeve's budget. Almost 2/3 of companies plan to hire fewer people as a result of Rachel Reeve's budget, which has forced employers into damage control mode. Rain Newton-Smith, the chief executive of the Confederation of British Industry, will tomorrow warn that tax rises like this must never again be done to business at the lobby group's annual conference in London, which the Chancellor is expected to attend. She may get a chilly reception. Those are your front pages. Let's get a reaction now from tonight's top pundits. Annunziata Rees-Mogg. Also, the brilliant Lord Coulvier Ranger and Paul Richards. There you go, folks. Really good to have you with me this evening. Can we talk about assisted dying, Coulvier, likely to pass, say, MPs, but many not happy?
Look, this is such an emotive conversation, and that's why there is a free vote on this, and then it will come to the House of Lords as well. And I think we all can see the two sides of the argument. But actually, I've seen that in my inbox, and I've received many, many letters on this. You receive them from those families who've been through a terrible situation with a loved one and not known what to do and felt like something needs to be done. That's one side of the emotional argument of this. The other side is, where does the power of the state come in, and how will we manage that authority? And I think a lot of people still feel uncomfortable, as do I, about that conversation, especially when we saw in COVID, we very quickly got to a point where we were doing things and advocating things to protect the NHS. Now, how suddenly we got to that point, and if we have laws like this, how would they be used in potential situations like that? And that's what concerns me.
You mean the risk of, I don't know, let's say there was some kind of pandemic scenario and people who are older and more vulnerable take one for the team to save the NHS?
Well, you know, we have to say there's nothing that could be taken off the table now.
That's concerning, isn't it? What do you think about this, Paul? It's non-party political. The Prime Minister won't be led on how he'll be voting.
Well, it's right that it's a free vote, but don't forget, this is a backbench bill going through. So this is Kim Leadbeater's own idea. It's not a government bill. And I think my preference would be, we've started a national conversation now. That's good. These issues are being ventilated and discussed. But I think we need a royal commission now. And if it is going to be a bill becoming a law, it should be in government time, and the government should lead that process.
And it gets the proper due diligence.
Absolutely, the due diligence. Not just parliamentary, but like I say, a royal commission would then bring in all the scientific, the moral as well issues. And just, if we're going to do it, we need to do it properly and not just rush through on a Friday afternoon in the House.
Annunziata, as a person of faith yourself, do you struggle with the idea of assisted dying?
I unquestionably do, but I think Coulvier raises an incredibly important point, that it puts the government into a position of choosing life or death for people. And I think it's very noticeable that the association that represents hospices and palliative care has come out against this, that there is undoubtedly a lack of funding in palliative care in this country, and they feel this is a slippery slope to get rid of that altogether and basically just get rid of people instead of ameliorating them and making them as comfortable as possible. But we did see in COVID, but I don't think it takes COVID or another pandemic for these decisions to be made, that the NHS is always juggling scarce resources. And as soon as you're deciding some are more beneficial to some people than others, doctors will be facing these decisions.
Well, also, Paul, if we're honest, it probably happens already to a degree, because doctors and other medics do make a judgment if someone's very poorly in hospital, don't they? Well, I've seen it with my own relatives.
They do, and there's that sort of final administration of a painkiller or whatever it might be to see somebody away. You know, that does happen.
And I've had relatives who have had plenty of medication and other support withdrawn, given their condition.
Well, the do not resuscitate issue is being thrown into relief too, because, I mean, that's been used in effect of sort of state-sanctioned euthanasia as well, isn't it? And people are saying, you know, so if the state is going to take the right to take a life, it needs far more scrutiny than we've had in the last couple of years.
Annunziata, is assisted dying a sin?
I would not judge anyone else's sin. It's not my position to. I could not support it for myself. I would not encourage anyone else to do it. It is suicide. But it's suicide where you're putting the act of killing onto someone else, and that makes me very uncomfortable. It does make doctors, God, in effect, choosing life or death. And it will come down to their actions as to whether the person does live or die. But I think a lot of people do also feel pressure, whether it is from a lack of NHS resources or that they feel they're a burden on their family, emotionally or physically. And I think that is a great concern.
Kulveer, Daily Telegraph, 2/3 of companies slash hiring plans after Reeves' budget. Look, people have their political views, don't they? You've got the Liberal Democrats in the yellow corner, you've got Reform, you've got the Tories, you've got Labour. We actually all need this government to succeed, and they're going to be the incumbent for at least 4 years. Are they going to have to change their approach? Because, I mean, this, I think, is quite a damning story. And it's the chief executive of the CBI who has said that almost 2/3 of companies plan to hire fewer people as a direct result of Rachel Reeves' budget.
Well, you're right, Mark. We need the government to succeed, but more importantly, for a government to succeed, we need business, commerce, industry to succeed.
And that's your background?
It is. And I've spent 25 years mainly in industry. And I know the CBI well. I know Rain well. And I wouldn't expect the CBI wanting to immediately start taking this kind of tone with the government. They would want to be on the side of a government, encouraging them. So this is quite something for this early stage, a couple of months into this government, the CBI saying, look at the damage that is being inflicted on business. Look at where you want growth. What you've done is not creating growth. So you have to look carefully at how you're going to plan out the next 4 years if you really want those taxes to increase from business industry to spend in the public sector.
Now, Paul, let's look at Liz Truss and her disastrous mini-budget. What was the response by the Conservatives to that? They fired her, and they replaced her with Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt.
You are not comparing.
No, but what the Conservatives did, what the Tories did mid-term is completely change tack. And they went for prudence, and they actually didn't lower taxes. What they did is they decided they were going to stabilise the economy, which they did, and get inflation down. Don't Labour need to do the same thing? This approach to the economy is failing, and Labour have got to do the mother of all U-turns.
This is nothing like the Liz Truss budget.
No, it's probably worse, actually, if I think about it. Because Liz Truss's budget didn't tank growth, did it?
What a load of old nonsense. This
never got implemented.
This poll, by the way, is 266 businesses polled by the CBI to get a headline ahead of their conference. I don't think it's particularly
But the vast majority of businesses in the UK
are you going to be dismissive of the businesses? Just after your remarks about the farmers earlier, who you said were militant anti-Labour.
I'm dismissing the veracity of this particular poll because the sample is so low and it is just a headline generator.
It's because the CBI represents big businesses. The smaller businesses are represented by the Federation of
businesses, and this is 206, and there's not all of them. Also, a bit later in the piece, it says that more than half are not going to delay their wage increases. more than half are not going to.
If a company like Sainsbury's has an extra £300 million a year to find for this increase in national insurance contribution from employers, where are they going to get that money from? Look at the margins in the supermarket sector, 2-3%.
Look at all the people who have an increase in the minimum wage and now be spending their money in the supermarket.
Right, but Sainsbury's will hire fewer people, won't
Straight
they?
into inflation. That's not very helpful for them.
There's the people spending money in shops. That's what that will do.
So, I mean, are you not concerned at all about the impact of this budget? Because if I was a Labour supporter, I'd say, look, it's been a terrible 4 months, the budget's been a disaster, but we're going to do what the Tories did in 2022. We are going to turn this ship around. We're going to fire Rachel Reeves for a start, because she's been a disaster from the start.
Rachel Reeves is brilliant. Right. So she's one of the best chancellors
Brilliant economist.
we've had
Economist
since
with the
war.
truth.
And I would say that the budget putting money into the health service, which let's not forget that's what it was for, is the best thing we can possibly be doing.
I think what we need is we need to see economic literacy from this Labour government, and we're not seeing it. And there's a real worry in the business industry that Labour is not literate when it comes to deciding how it's going to generate growth.
Well, listen, I think this one is kicking off, so we're going to take a very quick break. And after this, I'm going to be asking, should Sir Keir Starmer fire Rachel Reeves in order to save his premiership? Also, what about this Prince Harry, an extraordinary documentary on Channel 4, which has just aired, attacking Queen Camilla and basically casting her as the evil stepmother. After this, find out the cruel nickname that Prince Harry has for Queen Camilla. Plus, is Ed Davey making a mockery of politics with his comedy TikTok videos? All of that next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tell us about this film, because it's obviously come from your own experiences.
We wanted to create something for the entertainment industry that wasn't just another kind of dull documentary. I mean, some of them are brilliant, they're very informative, but you kind of leave a bit bewildered and a little bit kind of flat. So we thought, I've got a passion for writing and you've obviously got an unbounded knowledge on the subject. Why don't we create a film with a kind of satirical look on eating disorders?
So this came it's been made 20 years after your own...
It is 20 years.
20 years,
practically to the day.
So Samantha, you suffered with OCD and an eating disorder as well?
Yes.
And that's when your mum became a counsellor, is that right?
A little bit later on, I think we spent a bit of time in the system and I realised that it wasn't working for us. So I took it on myself to learn as much as I could about the subject.
I call it a tragedy, probably the wrong word, but suffering.
No, it is a tragedy because mental ill health and eating disorders destroy the lives of not only the sufferers but their families as well.
But you've turned that into something so positive and so
It's amazing, really, that 20 years ago our story was just beginning, and 20 years on, we've done what we've done. But I have to say that very little has changed in the system.
I've heard that.
And I think that's what we're passionate about.
Yeah, so...
That was why we wanted to... I mean, I work with families every day and I see the destruction that eating disorders and other mental illnesses not just bring to the sufferer but the whole family.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really passions me, because obviously 20 years ago we were there. And I just feel that so much more needs to be done. And I think with eating disorders, there is still a lot of misunderstanding around the subject.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, more front pages, and we start with the Guardian newspaper, and they lead with no alternative to raising tax defiant Chancellor to tell the CBI. Keep a pledge on Britain's held abroad, Lammy told. And climate deal, travesty of justice, say poor nations. Independent. Death toll climbs to 4 as Storm Bert triggers flood chaos and 70-mile-an-hour winds. And Starmer doubles down on bid to slash the welfare bill. Sir Keir Starmer has promised zero tolerance for benefits cheats as Labour seeks to tackle the ballooning welfare bill. It came as Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, prepares to unveil sanctions for young people who refuse to take up training or work responsibilities. Well done, Labour. What a good move. OK, the Daily Express now. Dame Esther's plea as 68% support assisted dying law change. The people have spoken. Let's hope this time someone is listening. And how about this? Starmer union in bullying scandal. The head of Sir Keir Starmer's union is embroiled in allegations of harassing and bullying women. This is the GMB, one of Labour's biggest backers, which boasts the PM among its 500,000+ members. OK, well, listen, folks, we'll get through some of those stories, but let me also tell you that Channel 4 have just aired a bombshell documentary about Queen Camilla, our lovely, wonderful Queen, and it's been pretty unflattering about the King's wife, with Harry characterising his mother-in-law as the evil stepmother. So do we think... That's right, the wicked stepmother is the exact quote, which sounds quite outrageous and very, very rude and obnoxious. And in fact, that is the title of the documentary, Queen Camilla, the wicked stepmother. Royal biographer Tom Quinn says Harry said everyone treats her as a goddess, but she's the wicked stepmother. Diana's private secretary, Princess Diana's private secretary, Patrick Jeffson, said Camilla is a shrewd, media-savvy person. We've been told that the campaign to rehabilitate Camilla has been subtle, but it's got the subtlety, so the quote goes, of a sledgehammer. Meanwhile, Charles's office was cold-blooded by telling lies to the press about Prince Harry. OK, let's get a little clip of this outrageous documentary.
Way to look at the PR campaign that Charles's office launched. There was always an underlying motive. You are going to promote Charles and Camilla. Results were good stories published, bad stories suppressed. And if people got hurt in the process, including Charles's own children, then that was a price you had to pay. When the history is written of Charles and Camilla, it will not be seen as a particularly glittering episode in the British monarchy. I think it'll be the opposite. I think it's rather tatty, tawdry. It's a story of opportunism and extraordinary cruelty to those who got caught up under the wheels of their inexorable, inevitable love.
I met Harry at a polo match. I asked him about Camilla and his face darkened and he said, everyone treats her like a goddess, but in fact she's the wicked stepmother.
Paul Richards, this sounds to me like character assassination, a stitch-up of Queen Camilla. What's your view?
I don't care about any of this nonsense. I just think this
is our Queen we're talking about. How can you not care about our Queen? Chosen by God to lead you.
Yeah, well, no, not my king, not my Queen. I just think this is the kind of froth that goes on. People briefing, counter-briefing, people flogging books, trying to
nearly as bad as the Labour Party, isn't it?
It's, but at least we elected them. You know, this is just nonsense. And I think there are big constitutional questions that need to be answered, but this is not it.
I mean, have you met Queen Camilla yourself?
I have not. You know, I'm privileged to sit in House of Lords when the King does come to open the House, a state opening. But the Queen has brought some kind of stability, it feels, to King Charles's life at this stage in his life. So, you know, there is something, but obviously the route to that has been challenging and turbulent and has had an impact on Prince Harry and William as well over their youth. So you can understand why the children will have this view. Anyone who's ever had a stepmother, it's probably been challenging for them at some point. But I think we, as Paul says, get to see it through the lens of second and third hand and quotes and books and timing of when this was said and so on and so forth. So in the modern day, where we are right now, do we feel that the King and the Queen are stable, are providing the leadership in the monarchy that we require, and we can continue on the basis that she is doing her duty? And I think that's where we are at the moment.
Annunziata, are you in Team Harry or Team Camilla?
Oh, very much Team Camilla on this one. That I know a number of people who work in charities that she has been involved with,
Domestic
she has
abuse.
supported, and her reputation is incredibly good. She is hard-working, she is dedicated to the causes, and she represents them fiercely. And that is what we want in our Queen, whilst, as you say, giving stability to our monarch. I think she's been there through thick and thin. She has actually kept very quiet, low profile, and I think she has been admirable in the role. And every friend I've got who at some point or other got a step parent called them the step monster. I think this is perfectly normal. I don't have one, I've never had one myself, but that it is a normal emotion for a child where a parent is, in their view, replaced by a new one. However, I think Harry's left, and really he should just be quiet.
There you go, put up or shut up. Well, look, props to Paul for not caring. Paul, let's talk about something you do care about, which is politics and, you know, party leaders, all the rest of it. Ed Davey was very successful in the election with all those funny videos of doing water slides and all the rest of it, riding a bicycle. Well, he's back with a series of viral TikTok videos trying to ask the Prime Minister for some kind of challenge. Take a look.
Bring the boom strong, bring the boom and no fear, bring the boom was the song of the summer this year.
Put him on the boom meter, we're gonna rate it. Put the fries in the bag now, already ate it.
Boom and doom in the restaurants, making some noise, taking the...
So I think Paul Richards, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, wants to challenge Keir Starmer to a game of FIFA, which is a football game, isn't it, on the computer? You know, is this bringing politics into disrepute? Is it trivialising politics?
I think it's the playing out of a massive midlife crisis by the leader of one of our political parties. It's just utterly, utterly embarrassing. And, you know, I don't know what on earth his advisors are allowing him to do this for, but it's
well,
just
what's the
awful.
price being paid for this approach, do you think?
Well, it does trivialise politics, and it does make people think that politicians are just rather, you know, venal and stupid and trashy.
And it's all a laugh.
And at a time when actually we need politics to be about serious things.
But is Ed Davey not sort of making politics more universal, getting more of us interested in politics that otherwise wouldn't?
I mean, I was reflecting, actually, John Prescott, God rest his soul, was very good at this kind of stunt. You know, he swam down the Thames to highlight water pollution, for example, when he was a shadow minister. But then he was in government doing something about it later in his career. You know, Ed Davey is just making TikTok videos, and that's all he'll ever do.
I completely agree with you. Headliners is next. And who's looking after it? Steve N. Allen. Steve, can't wait. What have you got for us? What's in your box of delights tonight?
My box
Open your box for me.
My box is full like you wouldn't believe, and it's going to be the perfect way to end your week. What we're looking at is, well, the Labour Party's got a few things in tomorrow's news to worry about. They've got UK security. They're being accused of not taking it seriously. As long as no one's starting any wars nearby, that'll be fine. A petition to try and get them out because, well, everyone's doing petitions these days. They're very popular online. And benefit crackdown, which might mean I stop signing on. We'll find out.
There you go, brilliant. Look, can I thank the brilliant Paul Richards. Paul, lovely to have you back in the studio. Corvair Ranger, Annunziata Rees-Mogg. Please come back soon. Most importantly, your company for the last 3 days. It's always a thrill. I'll see you Friday at 8 o'clock. Have a good week. Headliners, and Steve is next.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. Storm Bert just slowly starting to edge away, so we've still got an evening of strong winds across the UK, further rain in places too, and it remains blustery on Monday as well. And we can see Bert there just anchored to the north of the UK, slowly pushing its way eastwards, so staying windy for the next 24 hours or so, but it does eventually calm down. We do have heavy rain across parts of England and Wales pushing its way southeastwards, blustery showers following, strong winds across Northern Ireland, Scotland, 60, 70 miles an hour possible, so there could be some disruption over the coming night as well. Temperatures under clearer spells dipping into single figures, so a fresher start to Monday for many. Early rain across the southeast starting to clear, but it's an unsettled start across parts of Scotland first thing. Outbreaks of heavy rain in places, strong winds as well, gusts of 40, 50 miles an hour, but only slowly pushes away. Northern Ireland also seeing frequent heavy showers, something a little drier and brighter for northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands, but blustery showers pushing in from the west, rain soon clearing southeast England, but remaining quite cloudy here with some patchy, showery rain in places. And through the day, it's a day of sunny spells and showers for many, though showers frequent across the north of the UK, particularly Scotland, where we'll see some longer spells of rain, the rain turning to snow over the higher ground as some colder air moves in here too. So an unsettled, blustery day to come for many. Temperatures lower compared to Sunday, generally 7 to 11 Celsius. So actually around average for the time of year. For Tuesday morning, the risk of some showers after an early frost in places, and generally a drier, brighter day with lighter winds for many, but still windy across northeast Scotland into the afternoon. Perhaps some rain approaching the far southwest later on in the day. Temperatures near average, feeling a little cooler towards the middle of the week, and generally remaining a little unsettled.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles?
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world, and the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the 2 of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions, and we stood there at my porch and went, Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've got
GoFundMe page
social
yet?
media platforms at the Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
GB News, the People's Channel.